President Trump called it a stunning display of military power. Others describe it as a kidnapping, a violation of international law and an extremely dangerous precedent. America's capture of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has been met with both celebration and trepidation as the rest of the world wonders what it means for them. For us. Defence expert and former Major General in the Australian Army, Gus McLaughlin, joins me now. Major General, I guess, how would you describe it?
Yeah, Layla, I think it's all of those things that you described. It was an incredible military operation. We can't put that aside. There's only one country on the planet that can do what the Americans did. They had intelligence operatives on the ground for months in advance. They had cyber penetration so they could shut down internet and lighting in the areas that they wanted to approach. They were able to suppress air defence systems that were quite sophisticated. We think out of China, stealth aircraft, stealth drones, and then 2 hours later, the president of a foreign country has been effectively abducted and taken back to American territory.
So it was a very impressive raid. What do you make of the motivation, though? The president said that it was about narco-terrorism, but he has spoken a lot about oil. Why do you think this happened?
I think it is about oil, but I think we can even zoom out a little bit further, Layla, and say that this is America's backyard. And the Americans recently put out a national defence strategy that talked about securing the Western Hemisphere first, meaning they want the continent of South America, North America, which, Greenland comes into play. They want all of that secured from foreign influence before they have to counter other, main state actors like China or Russia. So they've got belligerent countries. They want them under control, and this is a way to signal to a lot of those countries, particularly in South America, that they're willing to act. And of course, it doesn't hurt that one of the major reserves of liquid energy, natural gas in the world, is also available for their exploitation.
Presumably, though, I know you were in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was overthrown. In the short term, yes, it's an incredible raid and they seem to have achieved everything that they wanted to achieve, but does it look like they have a better plan for a post-raid Venezuela than they did for a post-Saddam Iraq?
Regime change is really difficult, which is why countries steer away from it. After that Iraq experience, we saw Saddam's removal, we saw the fragmentation of Iraq into factions. We actually saw more dangerous individuals emerge in the aftermath. That's the risk in Venezuela. I think what's happened this time, though, I suspect there might have been some deal-making. Perhaps some of the subordinates, if they offered up the president, would be allowed to stay in place. And I think the Trump administration plans to try and administer the country through the existing regime. Now, whether they can maintain the support of the population and the other countries in the world remains to be seen.
So if you have other countries that America deems a threat in their region, they've been well and truly signalled to behave. What about Russia and China? What's the signal to them?
Well, I think they're sitting back and feeling that their behaviour is now validated, because the country that we called the light on the hill, that was going to behave morally, we might not have always agreed with the interventions it made, but I think we probably were always able to convince ourselves they did so for the right reasons. This sends a message to particularly Russia and China that might is right. If you have the capability and nobody can stop you, then you can go ahead and do what it is you want to do. And if I was Xi Jinping looking at Taiwan, for example, I'd be probably feeling a little bit more confident that the Americans might not oppose any action that I might take there.
Where does that leave Australia? Because we are not in the American region. I mean, they're our key ally. Presumably they still are. But where does this all leave us?
Well, for people like me, this is the really big question. It appears what Trump is signalling is that there are going to be spheres of influence in the world. And they're signalling that the Western Hemisphere, the continents of North and South America are American territories, stay away. But I think they're also signalling that those spheres of influence will be less disrupted by American power than they might have been in the past. The challenge for Australia is which sphere do we fit in? We're probably closer to China and Southeast Asia and the Chinese sphere of influence, but of course we underpin our security, or we have done since World War II, with our relationship with the United States. So I suspect there's some nervous policymakers in Canberra at the moment just trying to work out what this means for Australia.
As a military man, what would your read be about how the US military will be looking at the Trump administration now in light of this flex of power?
I think it's a really important issue. Firstly, I can tell the viewers that at the peer-to-peer level, we have an incredibly close relationship with the United States military. Intelligence sharing, access to satellites, amazing technology, that continues, and we can trust that, and I've lived that, and it's quite amazing. I also have deep trust in the American military as an institution. They are apolitical, they are proud that they serve the Constitution, but they will be challenged. There have been a number of leaders sacked by the Trump administration, and so how deep does the Trump influence go in the senior US military? Fair question. At the moment, I'm confident that it remains an institution that's integrity is intact.
We should probably talk a little bit more deeply about Greenland, because Greenland is in the NATO community with Denmark. If the US does go into there, and President Trump tends to do things he says he's going to do, what's the fallout there? Can NATO stand up to America? America's just so powerful.
Well, Denmark, who administer the territory of Greenland, are a NATO member. So the United States would be ultimately attacking another NATO member. So I'm not even sure NATO could survive that interaction. Now, Greenland is critically important, particularly with climate change. So we're seeing the ice melt in the north of the planet. Seaways that have been closed off in the past are now reopening. So access for submarines and surface ships that can launch missiles that can reach the United States is a threat.
But America is entitled to send defence forces in there now without invading. Why aren't they doing that?
So I would think that's the obvious solution, is talk to the people of Greenland and the Danes and say, look, we need bigger bases, or we need more radars or sensors, and we need to be able to launch our own submarines or ships. But that doesn't mean America needs to control that territory. I think that's the most logical outcome, but we don't always have the most logical outcome with the Trump administration.
The leader of Denmark did say today that America can rebuild its bases there. Yeah.
Well, the Danes aren't the problem. I don't think the people of Greenland are the problem. The Americans generally pay their way. So the question is, is Trump trying to leave a legacy? Is this something that, that he feels will cement him as one of the sort of great American leaders by expanding American territory? We just don't know what motivates him. But like a lot of things he says, there's a core of necessity underlying his ideas. And in this case, Greenland at the moment has tremendous strategic significance. Who owns it and who bases military force there, I think, is, can be resolved sensibly.
Okay, Major General, thanks for all your insights.
Thank you.